Welcome. I'm Alice Alicia Jones, and truly, about 10 minutes ago, I decided to change the topic for today. It just seems fitting that since today is September 11th, that I do instead of my what I had prepared for today, which was a continuation of Wednesday's talk, to do instead the a commemorative on 9/11. One thing for sure, it seems like everybody has a story about 9/11. They experienced something firsthand. They knew somebody who experienced something firsthand. They all are connected to it, at least anybody that I've talked to about it. My story was extremely personal because at that time, 2009, 11, 2001, I had a child in school at New York University. She was in her junior year. She had been accepted to the Tisch School of Drama and Arts, and her program was film studies. So she told me that when I finally did get a chance to talk to her, that every single person that was walking north, the street that she was walking down just happened to be Broadway, and she lived in the Lower East Side at that point. So she had a pretty direct shot to where the World Trade Centers were, a visual shot. And she said as she was walking north, she noticed that everybody's eyes were focused up and they were looking at the sky and they were looking in one particular place. So she stopped, she turned, and she basically saw the enormous dust cloud that had occurred after she. Hi, Joanne. Thank you for watching. She saw the dust cloud that occurred when she was walking. And I'm pretty sure that she stayed on the street long enough to see the second tower hit, because the first tower apparently had hit when she was coming out of her building, but the second tower hit while she was standing there and looking at it. For me, the person who identified the fact that this was going on was my painter. And I don't know, I guess he had been tuned into the radio. And then he kept saying, Mrs. Jones, go turn on the news. The World Trade Center has just been hit. And all I could think of is, oh my God, that isn't but what, 20, 30 blocks away from where Elizabeth lived and went to school. So I, I immediately started to frantically hope that I could reach her. And anybody who had a cell phone, um, even those people could not get through because I guess the number of cell towers that were on the World Trade Center knocked out the service. And anyway, the first time that we heard from her, it was already 10:45. And all she could tell us is that she was okay and that we, just that there was nothing wrong with her. She was safe and that she would duck into a building. The irony was that she lived at that time on the in the dorms off of Lafayette Street and the New York dorms. And it wasn't until her senior year that she moved to Orchard Street in the Lower East Side. But she said she was very, very close to Houston Avenue, and Houston separates the Lower East Side from the Upper. And effectively, by closing off the streets, there was no traffic and nobody was allowed to go home. Every single person had to find shelter elsewhere. But she told me afterwards, because we only got to speak to her for about a minute and a half, and then the cell phone went dead. And but at least that assurance gave us um, the fact that she, that she was okay was enough. And from that moment on, all I did was pray continuously, constantly, just prayed because I there was all access to New York was blocked. You could not go there. You could not get your children out of school. Uh, you couldn't go in. You couldn't go out. And so the people that lived there just had to manage the best way they could. And there were just so many incredible, heroic acts of people who were there for each other. It was an amazing time. And the irony is that the group of the world opinion for the United States had gotten to be one of such sympathy because who would have ever expected the Twin Towers to be attacked? And then when they collapsed and the dust cloud that followed people as they were racing for home was just incredible. So it must have been probably one of the scariest things that would have ever happened to anybody. And the irony, like I said, is anytime I've ever talked to anybody about this, if they didn't have a personal experience themselves, they knew somebody that did somehow or other. But the other thing that I did want to share was how many people were spared the agony of having to get out trying to find shelter. Because, for one thing, as people were racing to get out of the building, the firemen were racing to go into the building. So that was amazing in the sense that people really got to witness firsthand what it means to risk your life. I mean, this is on an international scale because this was all televised around the world. But what it is to risk your life for another. We do know that um, there are so many things, little things that I've picked up about this attack. Um, Strange things, strange pieces of information. Uh, One thing was that when people picked up the ash from the building, or when they found themselves sooted with it, that there was pieces of like melted glass on the ash, as if that there had been a tremendous fire that had burned everything rather than a a collapse. So effectively, yes, there was a fire, but the collapse of the buildings was more significant. Um, the other thing was the very strange thing was that St. Stephen's Church, which is the oldest church in New York City, was spared from any falling debris, and there was a cross shaped girder that was like driven like a stake into the ground of one of the buildings that just made a uh, a cross shape, and that it was a to me, it was a very symbolic reference to the fact that no matter what happened, that we were still protected by our faith. And so I really felt very, very grateful that we had that. And the other thing that, and this was maybe what at the end of her senior year when I went to graduation. We did go into St. Stephen's Church, and we saw the commemorative plaques. My daughter told me that every single inch of the fencing that was put up anywhere was covered by pictures of lost loved ones. Have you seen? And then a picture, their name. And again, heartbreaking, just heartbreaking. But effectively, stop to think of the fact that 2,983 people died in that event. And we are now facing the loss of almost 200,000 people that are, it's fast marching up to that number. I think we just passed 189,000. They figure that by the end of the month, we will easily have reached 200,000 deaths due to COVID 19. The difference is we're not the only ones paying this price. So is the entire world. But somehow or other, I feel just as the New Yorkers survived this catastrophe. And I can remember at Elizabeth's graduation, they had the graduation ceremony at Madison Square Garden. And because she went to school with the Justin Hoffman, the son of Dustin Hoffman, um, Dustin Hoffman gave the graduation address. And I never wrote it down. I never got a copy of it. But I just remember how very positive and very upbeat it was, and how miraculously all the New Yorkers banded together and helped each other out. They just were there for each other. Restaurants that just gave donated mountains of food, set up feeding stations. St. Stephen's Church became a rescue center for people to lay down on the benches just to catch their breath from the experience, because so many of them did not go home. So effectively, it I know I haven't the last time I was there, they were still in the process of constructing the memorial center. I hadn't seen it completed yet. I just saw pictures of it, and the most of the remarks that you can read with the memorial center that has been put up there is how peaceful it is. So I do just want to assure you that no matter where you are in this fighting, having to deal with COVID 19, no matter where you are in it, whether you're still sheltering in place, whether you're just so super tired of it, whether you're stressed out, whether it hasn't really affected your life that much, no matter where you are with it, um, we will get through this. We as a country are extremely resilient. We as a people are extremely resilient. And we will get through every single challenge that we have, that we are being faced with. So I know that I hadn't realized exactly, because I didn't prepare anything for this. Um, I hadn't realized how emotionally invested I was still in this time period, because I can remember how I had to go on faith that my child was okay, because in a week's time, I only heard from her again from that first morning on September 11th at 10:45. I didn't hear from her for another 7 days. So I had to go on faith that she was okay, that she was going to be okay through this ordeal. One of the things she did tell me, she said the scariest thing for them was as each one of them was racing for shelter once they recognized, they weren't really quite sure what had happened, but as they were racing for shelter, the word anthrax was thrown out, and that petrified them, because anybody who inhaled the anthrax powder, it meant instant death. So that really did petrify them. But anyway, just getting back to her graduation, I can remember one of the most vivid images is how the president of NYU um, congratulated Neil Diamond, because Neil Diamond had from the beginning given concerts, benefit concerts, and donated all the money to those on Broadway who had lost their jobs, because for what, 9 months, 10 months, 11 months, nothing was open in New York. And so he was given that tribute, and I just never forgot the fact that how generous he was with his time, with his talent. I thank you for watching. This is a day to be, just to give a thought back to the light of grace that exists within all of us. The light of grace, the light of hope, the light that effectively cannot, under any circumstance, be extinguished within us. It is there, it is constant. It doesn't matter how small it gets. Those of the lowest vibration obviously have a much lower light than those of a higher vibration, but that light will never be extinguished. So please do remember that. Take a few minutes to say a prayer and to commemorate those who were in uh, 9/11, who were lost in 9/11, as well as the, like I said, almost 200,000 that have crossed over from COVID. I thank you, and I will see you on um, Monday. Welcome. I'm Alice.